Hello everyone, and yes, welcome to today's session, and thank you so much for joining us. Before we dive into the session directly, let me just give a brief intro for those who are new here. Zoho Patents is Zoho's very own conversion optimization experimentation platform. That's designed to help teams understand how visitors behave, test ideas faster, and scale what works without juggling between the multiple different tools and everything. At Patents, we also strongly believe that growth happens when teams actually rely on data-driven systems rather than just guesswork. Real progress comes from testing the right ideas, learning and optimization, and that ties up perfectly with what we are diving into today. Today's session is all about achieving measurable conversion lifts on a very tight timeline, right? Not someday, not eventually. We are talking about the next 90 days. And to walk us through how companies actually do this in the real world, we have someone very special with us. We've got Gajan Retnasaba, who's the founder of Spiralyze, a 22% A/B testing agency. His team has led thousands of A/B tests for companies like Crowdstrike, Okta, Unbounds, Louse, and more. And here's the favorite part. He is also a father of identical twins, which he calls it the ultimate A/B test. So today he's going to share us the secrets that they follow in their agency to deliver a 30% conversion lift in the next 90 days. Gajan, over to you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm Gajan Retnasaba. I'm founder of Spiralyze. We're a 220-person agency that just focuses on A/B testing. And I want to show you what I would do if I were on kind of day one of a job and needed to get a quick win on the board. Here are the 5 steps I would use to get a 30% lift. I'm showing you a really cringe logo slide. I'm showing it to you for 2 reasons. One is they're awesome. These are brands that I work with. But the real reason is the magic is in the scale. Because we work with so many brands and we run thousands of tests every year, we have a really good sense as to what works. The other really interesting thing about Spiralyze is we scrape the web. So there are 34,000 sites that actively test, and we scrape all of them to see what tests they're running, to see what wins and loses. And we use that data to figure out the kind of tests that consistently win. And I want to share some of those with you today. First, 2 preliminaries. First, what is a reasonable goal for 90 days? It depends on the kind of site you have. Here are some kind of factors. The further you are to the right, the kind of bigger the lift you can get. If these are all to the right, I'd say you should aim for a stretch goal. A challenging but achievable goal would be 45%. If you told me these were all to the left, I'd say, 5 is about the most you could get. First, you get much bigger lifts when you have a site that is focused on lead gen, someone to get a demo, free trial, sign up for a sales call, then purchase. If you haven't tested at all, you're in luck. There's much more lower hanging fruit. If you have a site that has a single product rather than a mega store, imagine if you're an Amazon or Nike, there's just so many different SKUs. You have to do things that work across kind of a broad. If you're Nike, you have to do things that work on shoes, on clothing, on sports equipment. If you just sell one product, like a Casper mattress, it's much easier because you just need to do one product. If you have a highly differentiated product, it's easier. If you have a commodity product, if you're reselling, say, a branded product like Tide detergent, it's much harder to optimize because it often just comes down to a price, shipping time game. This one I think is the most counterintuitive. The stronger your brand, the harder it is to optimize. So if you're Nike or McDonald's. Kind of everybody knows your brand. Everyone's had experience with it. And so it's harder to change their opinion on the brand. If you're a brand new brand, it's actually counterintuitively much easier because nobody has strongly formed opinions. They're much more malleable. Finally, the last factor is just how discretionary is the purchase. If it's an impulse purchase, you've got lots of room to swing the conversion rate. If it's a mandatory purchase, imagine filing your taxes or registering in the DMV, where kind of the alternative is that you get arrested. It's much harder to swing that. By the way, if we have any questions, please just throw them in the chat, and Arthi, Jake, just
Definitely
yell out when you see something.
Yeah, I'll bring it up.
Awesome. I set 3 challenges for myself here. The first is I want to give you things that you could do inside of a week. The second is I want to give you things that are pretty consistent. So in the conversion world, you have to test everything. There's nothing that works 100% of the time, but I want to give you things that work kind of over 30% of the time. The third is I want to give you non-trivial things. It's easy to give you easy things like make sure your form is not broken. Reduce the number of form fields, drop the price. They work, but they're boring. So here are the 5 things I'm going to take you through. The first is I want you to rob banks. There's this old joke. Why do people rob banks? And the punchline is it's because that's where the money is. The corollary of that is why does nobody rob a preschool? Stick them up to a 5-year-old and hand me over your PB&J. Well, no one robs a preschool because, the preschoolers don't have any money. There are a couple more levels on that, right? You rob a bank rather than Fort Knox because you rob a convenience store rather than a bank, rather than Fort Knox because it's achievable, right? You have a realistic chance of robbing a bank or convenience store. Try robbing Fort Knox. It's a really, really heavy lift. Once you get there and find yourself robbing the bank, you want to empty out the safes. You don't want to just, steal the little jar of mints if you're robbing the bank, right? So you want to look for pages that have high numbers of conversions, not high traffic, high numbers of conversions, and where you can kind of see easy wins on the page. Here are the places where we find our data says there's usually a lot of traffic and where you can find wins, where the customer is still in play. Some of these low ones, especially the blog, are tempting because there's lots of traffic. But in reality, they drive very few conversions. So I'd avoid those. In SaaS, I'm looking kind of the usual suspects: home, pricing, demo. We've also found really good places, kind of high intent resources. So Gartner, which is kind of a buying guide for those of you not familiar, for SaaS. Why is that really good? If someone is looking for a buying guide, they're in the market. E-commerce, there's a bit of a gotcha. Product page is, of course, huge. That's where the buying decision is made. The cart and the checkout seem tempting because they're a choke point. Everyone has to go through the cart and the checkout. In reality, we find you don't tend to there doesn't tend to be a ton of opportunity there. People tend to have already made up their minds. There's a little, you can get 5-10% one time, but it's not a place you can keep coming back to again and again for wins. Okay, the second part of this is once you're there, you found good pages, you should take really big swings. So this is an example for a crypto company. You can see they've changed the image, they've changed the headline, they've gone from a single CTA to a dual CTA. It's a big swing. If you're trying to get a big result, you want to take really big swings. And that's for two reasons. One is the bigger the swing, the more likely you are to get a big result, a 20, 30, 40, 50% win. The second, more subtly, is that when you take a small swing, the test takes a lot longer to run. And it's not just a little longer, it's 4 to 10 times longer. So here's an example of the kind of test I would never run if I'm trying to get a big result. It's what I call a Where's Waldo test, where you really have to search to find the change. In this test, what they're doing is they change this get a demo to a slightly bigger get a demo. Right? And again, the two things that are wrong here is it'll take forever to run. It'll take 4 to 10 times more traffic to run than that big swing test. And even if it wins, you'll get a really small prize. You'll get a 2, 3, 4, 5% win. Okay, so now that we know where we're going to test. Arti.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were jumping in.
I don't know. I was just looking at the Waldo A/B testing. It was like quite interesting. Yeah, it took me time to understand where the change was, the variation difference. Yeah, go ahead. Gajan, sorry.
No. For non-Americans in the audience, Where's Waldo is a children's book. And
It's a book.
the idea,
you have to find the person, right?
yeah, you got to find this guy. So it'll be this big, huge page.
That was news. Okay, I didn't notice that. I noticed the font size, but not the character. Okay.
That was, yeah. So for those of you, see a little bit of Americana.
Okay. Got it.
There'll be a picture like this, and you need to find Waldo in the picture.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Okay. This is the part. Second is there are 3 basics of CRO that you will see even CRO pros miss these basics 80% of the time. The first is what I call click continuity, which is continuity. If you're running an ad, you're making a promise to people. You're saying, if you click this ad, I'm going to give you more information about 0% markup payment processing. And if we look at the keywords here, it's 0%. It's save up to 40%. It's winter sale, 100% off your first 3 months. When I click, I expect continuity. I expect to see more information on these topics. About 80% of the time, that continuity is missing. So here's what you actually get when you click this. You click 0% markup. And that 0% markup is gone. It's not on the page. The save 40%, it's not on the page. Number 1 ranked, it is on the page, but there's not really much justification for it. That winter sale that got me to click, the 100% off, it's not on the page. So there's no continuity, right? The user feels like they're in the wrong place. They feel like they were lied to, and now they're going to bounce. If you're bored, run almost any search in Google, right? Low cost CRM. And I'm not going to click the Zoho, but let's click this one. And see, all that messaging is gone, right? I was promised low cost. It's not on the page. I'm bouncing. The other place click intent goes wrong is within the page. So within the page, when I click on something, let's say I click on these words, see plans, my click intent is what you've promised me is to show me plans. But this is the QuickBooks website. When I click see plans, the words have nothing to do with plans. There's no information about plans. And again, because you've violated this principle of click continuity, I'm going to bounce. Right? So you want to make sure whatever people click, whether it's an external link into your site, an ad, organic, some kind of sponsored display ad, or an internal link, that there's click continuity. The second thing that's really important is once you get to the page, that the message is clear. And two things have to be clear. First, it's got to be clear what you do. And second, it's got to be clear what's in it for me, with them. You got to tell me why I should care. So here's an example of a page that violates messaging clarity. It's written in English, but I have zero idea what any of this means. You know, what is a unified revenue operating system? And why should I care about a unified revenue operating system? The third thing that's really important is that the image is consistent with the copy. So I haven't had good luck with the chat, but I'm going to try again. One game we play.
So sorry. So people are posting in the Q&A session.
Oh, awesome. Love it.
So like there's one person who has asked, he's asked, how is it possible to make landing pages for every bidding keywords? Because you mentioned the inconsistency, right? The keyword and the copy.
Great question. So you should break your keywords into clusters. And so you might end up with 10 clusters. Let's say you're a CRM. One cluster might be that you're the lowest cost. One cluster might be around your brand. One might be that you're better than competitors. Right? And so then I'd make a landing page for each cluster. If that's too much of a lift, I would just dynamically change the header section for each of those clusters. So you really only need one landing page with 4 or 5 copy options for the header section. If you don't, you're essentially just lighting money on fire. You will, it is the easiest win there is in CRO to align the click intent. Okay, so this is a trick I use for image consistency all the time. The image should be consistent with the copy. So what I do is I use Google Translate. You can use this with your team. Use Google Translate and you change all the copy on your site to Arabic. And then you ask people, what is in this copy on the left? Can anyone guess, throw in the chat or the Q&A, what does this company do?
Consultancy.
You want to take a guess? Sorry.
Consultancy? I mean, I'm
someone said agency.
Okay. I just
I have 2 votes for agency. it's a whiteboard company. It's a it's like a WeWork. You can rent an office space. Well, what is in real life is it's software for reporting on environmentally sustainable growth. Right. So not only so when the image doesn't align, you're making the copy do all the lifting. This image is really lazy. It's not doing any work. Even worse, in this case, the image is it's wildly inconsistent. So it's distracting people and making them think, oh, is this an ESG consulting company? Is this guy going to turn up in my office? Here's an example of a company that has got the consistency right. Or it's at least better, right? You can see it's software. You can see it has something to do with the environment. Now, the copy doesn't need to do as much of the work. It's sharing the lift with the image. They're both pulling in the same direction. Here's another good example. This is Gusto. They do payroll software. And you can see payroll, and they're showing you a payroll interface. HR, they're showing you some kind of HR tools. Benefits, showing you benefits section. A hack I use when reviewing designs is everything in the headline reflected in the image? Is everything in the copy reflected the image? Sometimes you can't get it all, but you at least want the most important ideas. So those 3 C's are what I call the basics of CRO. You want your copy to be consistent with the click intent. Once they get there, you want that copy to be clear, and you want it to be clear about what you do and what's in it for the customer. And then your images, you want the images to reinforce whatever's in the copy. If you do those 3 things, you're way ahead of 80% of the websites and CROs you'll see out there. So I want to move you on to something a little more advanced. You want to eliminate the third thing I would play is I would try and take out as many distractions from the page and then strategically use the space I've created to direct people in the right direction. Now, I found CROs, we often just add stuff, and we add stuff, and we add stuff, and we add stuff, and before you know it, the website is Times Square. The key I found before you add anything is figure out what you're taking away first. Okay. So there are 2 things you can eliminate: words and visuals. Words. It's shocking how many words you can often remove from a page. So here are 3 things I see all the time. The first is brand. It's repeating your brand name over and over again. The customer knows that the copy is about your product, right? Why would it be about someone else's product? So all these repeated mentions of brand, you could just kill. It's not like rap music where you're constantly trying to tag it, you know. What does DJ Khaled say? I think he actually says, I'm asking one of the young people in the office. I think he says DJ Khaled. You don't need to do that every 3 words, right? If it's if you have your brand name in the header, which you almost certainly do, you never need to mention it again. Second is throat clearing. HangoBooks is not only available on the web. Okay? You don't need to state all the things that it's not. Right? And then you don't need to mention the obvious. Arguably, it's all obvious, right? You can use it on iOS or Android. Well, especially the iOS part, it's pretty obvious. It's down here. Also, is there any company who doesn't have an iOS app, in the US at least, right? And you can manage on the go. Well, that's kind of the point of an app, of a mobile app. Is there any mobile app where you can't use it on the go? You can only use the mobile app while in your office or in your home. Right. So if you get rid of all that, what are you left with? We have a mobile app, and it's on iOS or Android. Arguably, you could get rid of that too, because you got it down here in the image. But now that you've cleared up that space, you can add back a lot of value. You can show the person. I don't really know what this product does, but you can mention some of the non-obvious things that you might want to use this financial mobile app for. Hey, you can scan your receipts while you're on the road. Oh, that's useful. You can check account balances. So you can add back some of the value. You can do this visually too. Here, there's a good page. It's an ebook download page. But there are a bunch of distractions. You got this guy and this kind of woman whose head's cut off, and he's looking this way. So it's directing me in the wrong direction. Right? You have this horrible wall of text. You have these label names above the labels that are just kind of chewing up space. So here's what I would do with it. I've gotten rid of this kind of useless people banner. I've moved the field names into the field so the form looks shorter, right? And now that I've created all that space, I've reduced the text. Now I have a lot more space to play with, and I can actually show the ebook. That band that was doing nothing, I'm now using it as a diagonal element here. And it's all working to draw my eye toward the form. Now, subtly, if I just added the book, it would have made this page even more cluttered. Sundar said, how many fields? Sundara said, how many fields should I have? Rule of thumb, every field, depending on how obtrusive it is, reduces your conversion rate 5 to 10%. So to me, the ideal number, you should just think, is the field worth 5 to 10%? High friction fields like phone cost you about 10%. Now, if I'm calling the prospect, if I have a sales team that's actually calling the prospect, it's totally worth 10%. Right? I would take a 10% loss. Go for it, Aarti.
But Gajan, don't you think that maybe certain fields shouldn't be mandatory? That's where, like you mentioned, the form fields, maybe the dropouts might be reduced and everything else.
It's a great point. We've found people are really sensitive to how long the form looks.
Okay.
Optional is better than mandatory, but you're still taking some of a loss because the person gets to the page, they see it, and they're like, So I would just think, Sundara, is it worth the squeeze? Now, if you have their work email, do you really need the company? Is it worth a 5% loss to get something you already have? Probably not. Right? If you're not going to call the person, is it worth a 10% loss to get the phone number? Probably not. So to me, count is just dependent on what you need. Rule of thumb, try and keep it under 6. Once you go past 3 lines, also you never want the form to be below the fold. So if the form is so low, so long that you can't see the end of the form above the fold, you get a really big drop in conversion rate because the prospect doesn't know how long the form is. And so in their mind, it's the never-ending form. Okay, but there are also tricks you can use. You could collect some of the form fields before the submission and then ask for more after the submission. And just append them to the form. A bunch of tricks you can use. You can have a multi-step form where you get the main fields on step 1. So even if the person abandons, you can mark it to them. Bunch of tricks. So I want you to get rid of any unnecessary words, any visual clutter, and then use that space to create value for the user. This is a fun one. So when you make a big claim, big claims are great, but they tend to attract their opposite, which is skepticism. Right? So here, Pipedrive says, close 28% more deals after your first year. Right? That's a big claim. That's great marketing, right? I want to download and use Pipedrive. I thought I could get 28% more. I would do it in a heartbeat. So what stops people from filling it out? It's that when you make a big claim, it attracts its opposite, which is skepticism. So you need to have big proof. And I've found there are lots of ways you can prove your claim. As marketers, we tend to focus on the ones that resonate with us. I love customer reviews, right? So you'll see my instinct is to add customer reviews to everything. But they're only one type of proof. Even within customer reviews, there's what you think of as this kind of revenue, this review strip. But it could be a testimonial. It could be a customer logo. You could also have expert endorsements. That might be a Gartner. It might be a scientific paper. It might be some expert badge. Quantitatives. You can have 2 or 3 quick stats that support your claim. Hey, half of the Fortune 500 uses us. Visual proof. I thought Pipedrive actually does this pretty well. If the claim is you get 28% more because it's more organized, then show it. Show the product. Show how they get their 28% more. In local services, we find it's hugely impactful to show pictures of you doing the work. In fashion, I think this is an Hermes ad. Hermes, kind of the implicit promise is you buy our expensive clothing, you'll be beautiful and look cool. Your life will be more fun. So show it. If you unclog drains, show how you unclog drains. Show before and afters. Another type of proof is a guarantee. If we don't deliver, this will happen. Or you can try us for free before you have to pay. Really underutilized one is empathy. It just says, hey, I understand your problem. I've been there. For those of us that are more analytic, that doesn't really make sense. But to a lot of people, if you just show them that you understand where they are, it's proof to them. The last one I'm going to give you is a bit controversial. It's cheat. We have found the surest source of winning test ideas is to steal things that your competitors or companies that are similar to yours have already tested and won. Well, why does that work? Imagine your competitor is Salesforce. They're bigger, they have more traffic, they have a large testing team. They spend millions figuring out what works. And so once they've figured it out, you should piggyback on that. People have done studies on this. The tests that are based on copying competitors, not even copying winning tests from competitors, just copying anything a competitor does much better than even things based on research or best practices. A bunch of experienced practitioners have had the same effect. This is Ron Kahavi. He ran the testing at Airbnb and Microsoft. And he said at Bing, the rate of tests that won was about double when we copied something that I'm presuming Google tested and won than when we came up with our own ideas. Again, why? Because Google had to churn through hundreds of ideas to find a winning test. So if it won for them, it's probably going to win for you. This is the head of another large testing agency. Again, he says, hey, we run a lot of tests and copying competitors is by far number one. There are a couple of things I would suggest, though, in copying. One is you want to copy people that are good. I would lean toward high traffic sites. So you want your higher traffic competitors that have an A/B testing team. How do you know? Use LinkedIn. Go to their site from a bunch of different browsers, clear cookies, and see how they're running tests. Look, high traffic sites, people that A/B test, and look for changes that are big and unusual. So this is a test I saw on Monday.com do, and they tested this thing on the right, and this thing on the right ended up winning. You see, it's a big, unusual change. They likely didn't do this because they thought it looked better, right? They made the change because it was performant. So copy people that are good. The second is look for places where you're an outlier, where everybody is doing something different to you. So in e-commerce, for example, everyone's kind of gravitated to what I call these Shopify style checkouts. It's multi-step. You've got two columns. 2/3 is on the form. 1/3 is on your purchase. So if you're this company on the left and all your competitors are doing this other style of checkout, this is a really good test. Look for a place where you're doing things very differently from everyone else in your space. And try testing. Then one gotcha is here's who not to copy. I avoid copying things where a competitor did a full site redesign. Full site redesigns are rarely tested. If you spent a couple $1 million getting an agency to redesign your site, almost no one tests it. because the optics of, say, telling your boss, hey, we did this redesign, and we tested it and it lost, and now we're going to junk it. No one wants to do that. So redesigns are almost never tested. I'd also avoid kind of heavily design-driven competitors. Things like Apple, they care much more about design than they do about performance. And so these things tend not to convert. You know, Apple here, this is one of their product homepages. There's not even a CTA, right? Does it convert better? They don't really care. So there are my 5 steps. First, I want you to run big tests on the pages that have lots of conversions. I want you to do the basics, follow the click intent, make sure your copy is really clear and explains what you do and what's in it for the customer. Make sure the image aligns with the text. Third thing is I want you to remove any words or images that are distracting, and then use that space to do some CRO magic. Fourth, I would just experiment with new ways of proving things. Right? If you just do logos over and over again, if you do testimonials over and again, think of what are 3 other ways we can prove our claim. And fifth, have fun with stealing things that your competitors have already figured out. Arthi, why don't I stop there?
Yes, pretty good points, Gajan. Thank you so much. We do have a lot of questions for you. Just project them on the...
Awesome. Why don't you read some out?
Yes, I'll do that for you. How do you get case studies or testimonials from big brands? Because not everyone is willing to share a testimonial these days.
Yeah, great question. So I think that you got 2 moves, right? One is maybe you can't get it from a big brand on record, but maybe you can anonymize it. So you can say, yeah, Fortune 500 bank, right? CMO, Fortune 500 bank. The second thing you could do is a CRO move of it's a pain in the ass to get a testimonial approved if you're an employee at an insurance company, right? So make it easy for them to get approved, and give them some skin in the game, like offer an incentive, right? It might be a thank you gift card or gift or something like that. The third thing is, yeah, go for it.
No, sorry. Maybe once you're done. So like generally, even in our case, right, we have a lot of. I mean, generally getting case studies from big brands is a huge happening. Like not everyone is willing to have their logo project on the site and everything else. So even I was so curious to know how do you do it on your site.
Oh yeah, okay. I think what you're reacting to is we have a shit ton of testimonial videos from clients. You know, the obvious thing is make sure the clients do good work, so the clients are happy. But then we bake it into, I'll just share in case anyone wants to see it. What we do is we bake it into our check-ins with our clients. So we're doing our yearly check-in. The client is kind of at their peak happiness. We reviewed all the tests we've done for them, all the wins, everyone's high-fiving. And then baked into that process is we ask them at that point, say, hey, could you do a testimonial for us? We make a really specific ask. Like, hey, we need 30 minutes of your time. We'll send out a videographer. And here are the questions we'll ask. So it's really clear what they're on the hook for. We might even send them a couple that other people have done.
Okay.
At that stage, you know, it's like all of life. There's a give take. There's a reciprocity principle going on. we've just delivered this huge result for them, that's the time to ask.
Good point. Now, the next question is, how do you ensure CRO experiments align with long-term brand positioning and not just short-term lift?
Yeah. Maybe Gobi, give me an example.
I don't think they'll be able to
Yeah.
answer
So,
that.
I mean, pragmatically, short-term lift. I don't think it's hard to think of an example that comes to mind of a test where the lift is short-term, unless it's some kind of crazy offer, like get a free puppy if you fill out the lead form. If the experiment is aligned, you want to make sure the metric of the experiment is aligned with what the org wants, right? The brand positioning part, I find almost every client that there's this visionary brand document, but what do they, under all that, what do they want? They want more sales from highly qualified customers, right? If the experiment delivers that, I don't think anyone really cares if it's the right shade of fuchsia.
And then the next question for you is, which works better, multi-step form or one-page form?
Yeah, great question. You should test it short. Usually, if the form is short, you're better off with a single step. So under 6 fields, single step. Because there, just showing all the fields is a feature. You're saying, hey, this is it, you're done. If it's more than 6 fields, you should experiment with breaking it into chunks.
Another question on the same line. Any advice on landing page form field counts? I think it is form submissions or like field number of forms.
Yeah. I think we briefly talked about this, which is try and keep it under 6. Every field costs you 5 to 10%. Think about whether that field is worth losing 5 to 10% of your form fills. If it is, you might even want to add fields. I have customers all the time where it makes sense to add fields because you're getting more and better qualified customers. You know, if it's more than 6, do you really need them? Are they worth losing all those beautiful, juicy leads?
But I think isn't something like maybe if people are really interested in your product or service, they'll definitely want to sign it up no matter how long it takes for them to do it. But again, it differs. Not everyone has the time or sanity to like sit and type in all the data and everything else.
Yeah, I think on the margin, what you're really interested in when you do CRO are the people that are just kind of undecided, right? Because I think you're right. They're these hardcore people that are ready to buy. They've used your product before at another company. I have people that come into Spiralyze. It's their 5th or 6th company they've used it on, right? We could make that field 30 fields long, and they're still going to fill it out. But that person wasn't ever really in play. That's not who CRO is for. CRO is for that hesitant person that's kind of on the bubble. They're like, not quite sure. That's the person you can scare off with too many fields. And yeah, does that feel right?
Yes, it does answer my question.
Yeah.
And there are people thanking you for sharing all the insights and everything else. And
Kumar, thank you for coming.
Thanks for sharing your insights. It's really a big eye-opener on how to perceive things.
Awesome. I think we are right on time, Arthi. Should we call it a day? I know you have a couple of wrap-up messages.
Yes.
What's the next webinar?
The next webinar is, for this year, I think we are done for this year.
Yeah.
Next webinar is the month of Jan. We have one that talks about empathy and testing, A/B testing.
Awesome.
Jan 21st is the next webinar.
I will be there.
Thank you so much, Gajan. Thank you so much for sharing such amazing insights. And I mean, even for me, like I feel like there were so many. I had so many doubts, like testimonials. I had that question in my own head. So you brought so much clarity to the topic. It feels so chaotic for so many things like myself. And yeah, thank you so much for the super interesting session, Gajan. Thank you for your time. We'll be back next year with another CR Expert series. Until then, take care and thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.